Aha, we're back with another Hump Day episode, my favorite day, and it's pretty much
You're
Friday.
just hopeful on Wednesdays. You're just so hopeful on Hump Day.
Yeah, I try to assume the second half of the week is going to be better than the first, regardless of how good the first half was. So, eternally optimistic. But it's a holiday in the U.S. tomorrow and Friday, so for many of us, this is kind of like a mini weekend where our
Do
kids
you have
are
a
all
little
around,
tiny turkey behind you?
Chaos, yeah.
You gotta show me them.
Yeah, we can show this little turkey off. I don't actually know where he came from. One of my kids got it last year, but I don't know where it's from, or if they made it.
Oh, I think it just appeared on your bookshelf right now. I was like, yeah, that's the perk of a fully furnished apartment. They decorate it also.
It's actually lived over there. You just can't see it. And so I decided to move it, just to.
Are you gonna do Thanksgiving crafts with the kids? Like hand turkey with the tissue paper?
No. My kids
are
are
like Macy's parade of your local hometown. They have one everywhere, right?
They don't have that shit here either, I don't think. If anything, it's like taco truck parade maybe in Miami. But
oh, come on, there's got to be a Miami Thanksgiving parade.
I doubt it, but maybe. I don't know. I'm surely not going. I think my number one goal for the holiday is just make sure I don't accidentally or on purpose kill one of my kids, because they've been home for a few days and we've got a bunch of family in town, and it's a little chaotic. It's a little bit chaotic, but nonetheless, things are good. Okay, so Thanksgiving's coming up, but we got a couple of Thanksgiving presents, maybe gifts, excitement.
Did we?
I don't know. I think so. We'll talk about it after, to a certain extent.
JD,
what?
How many Tashi hoodies do you have?
More than I'd like to admit, actually. I've got a few of them. Because so the real story is, what happened was the original batch of Tashi hoodies was slightly messed up, but no one would really notice unless you're me. And so they gave us a bunch of new ones for free, and that's these. So I have a whole bunch of them. Well, not a whole bunch, but I've got a few of them in my size. I've also got a couple that are way too small. So every now and then you can see, if you see me wearing one that looks awfully tight, I didn't just get swole. It's just small. But yeah, shout out to our friends at Tashi. Thanks for the hoodie. We are a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So like, share, subscribe, help us get the old word out and get trending on Twitter or wherever else we are. We're on every major venue. Today we're talking about just a couple things that.
But we're going to talk about them a lot.
We'll talk about them a lot. Dominating the news for the last 24 hours. What are we talking about?
Okay, well, we're going to start with Poloniex. This is actually a weird rabbit hole of a crypto post, or like crypto Twitter post that I saw. So we're going to talk about Poloniex and layoffs and Huobi and why this matters. And this is actually maybe just a reminder about why we exist and why critical thinking is important in the space, because there's a lot of misinformation just generally about Poloniex. So we're going to talk about that. And then we have to talk about CZ and Richard Trang, because that's the only thing that there is to talk about right now. And if you don't know what we're talking about, you should wait and listen and learn, because this is going to be the hot news of crypto Twitter for all of Thanksgiving.
Or crawl out from under whatever rock you're living under, because it's like
this is Thanksgiving, not Easter.
Yeah, you couldn't miss the CZ news yesterday. But anyways, we'll talk about it and hopefully get everybody excited about the future. But first, we got a video. All right. So you got big Black Friday plans?
Yes, big Black Friday.
But anyways, all right. So
okay. No, I don't shop. I barely participate in consumerism.
Worst transition I've ever had.
Here's a weird Black Friday anecdote. No, hold on, wait. Did you ever see the movie The Room? No. There's this cult movie called The Room. This is gonna be great. It's gonna go viral. There's a cult movie called The Room by Tommy Wiseau, and it's kind of like Rocky Horror Picture Show, where people go to the to the theater and they throw things and whatever. And it's been a cult movie for about 15 years now. And about 6 years ago, I got to host Greg Sestero, one of the stars of this movie. I drove him around Edmonton. He was here for a big screening and opening of one of his new movies. I drove him around Edmonton, and it happened to be Black Friday. And the only thing he wanted to do was go to West Edmonton Mall. So I had to drive a movie star to West Edmonton Mall on Black Friday. And he was so disappointed.
So for anybody listening, West Edmonton Mall probably is not on your radar. It was.
Well, I thought it might be.
It was for the longest time the largest mall in the world. It's not anymore. There's one in, I believe Mall of America was bigger.
Oh, there's so many that are bigger. Like I'm sure the Cross Iron Mills Outlet Center is bigger now, but.
Yeah, this is, I mean, for the longest time, it was the thing. There's a huge water park indoors. There's a pirate ship.
They took down the roller coaster this year.
What?
Yeah. The roller coaster that's been there since the 80s and murdered many people. They finally took it out.
I've blacked out on that thing many times, on that roller coaster. Anyways, okay.
This is a live show. Now let's talk about Poloniex.
Now we'll get on to the reason that if anybody's actually even watching, why they're watching. Poloniex. So I think we talked about this last week, didn't we? A little bit.
We talked about the hack a little bit, but I don't want to start with the hack. I just want to talk about Poloniex as a company, because I think that that's where the beginning of the misinformation comes. So if you are a Poloniex user, you probably know that it has a super wide range of tokens. It has your typical tokens, and it goes pretty deep into altcoins. And so for that reason, you do see a lot of both new traders and more advanced traders on Poloniex. But they try to cater to advanced traders. They have some pretty, advanced options like margin trading and that kind of thing. They're supposed to have incredible security. But as we saw from the hack that we talked about last week, that was not exactly the case. And then they also offer staking and that kind of thing. But where the misinformation about Poloniex starts is that people say that Justin Sun, who is the founder of Tron, also founded Poloniex. And that is not the case.
No.
So I always think it's interesting because the news that we read about Poloniex is always like Tron founders new DApp has a hack, and it's like, okay, well, actually he didn't found it. Give Tristan some credit. But if we already have misinformation just in the headline of all of these articles, I think it's important to dive in and really consider who we're talking about and why we're talking about it.
Yeah. Kind of a macro point on this too. Yeah. It's been, since I've been in the space, a common debate or discussion because very few of the Asian enterprises, Binance, Poloniex, Huobi, others, have much information publicly available about their cap tables and ownership groups and who started them and so on and so forth. I would suspect a lot of that by design because it was not positively supported by most governments in those regions until like 10 minutes ago. So I kind of understand, but like why there's been some confusion. I mean, still to this day, people don't know, I think with certainty, who founded Binance with CZ and who else was on the original cap table, who's still on the cap table. People don't even know who's on the board, I don't think, of Binance. And Poloniex is no different. I mean, Poloniex is like one of those exchanges that was like a big deal a while ago. And like I used it in 2017, 18 maybe.
I mean, it's been around since 2014, I think.
Yeah, it's been around a minute. And you know, they scaled. They were a pretty big deal for a while. And then I don't know what happened. Like nothing. They were owned by Circle. Poloniex was owned by Circle, and then it was sold to someone. And then I think
so. It was sold to a group of investors in 2019, and Justin Sun is one of those investors.
One of the investors, yeah. So he's a money guy in this. I mean, Justin Sun's invested in a lot of stuff in the space. Guy became a billionaire off of Tron super early on, and ever since then has just had tons of capital to. Yeah, some would argue that he's been a good steward for the space. Others would argue that he's maybe done more harm than good. I'm kind of in the middle. He's done some good things for public awareness, and I think he's probably also said some shit that shouldn't have been publicly. But haven't we all? So you can't really fault the guy for that.
Hold on. And then like a year ago.
Go ahead.
This is important because it's about the mergers and acquisitions and investors and that kind of thing. Is about a year ago, so in November 2022, Huobi and Poloniex became partners. And Huobi was very standalone. It had its own token, but they were trying to get a lot of partners because Huobi is a Chinese exchange. And Poloniex saw this as a great way to maintain relevance within the Chinese market. This is important later. But Huobi had that initial standing in the Chinese market and still offered quite a few more advanced things like derivatives trading and staking and lending and so on and so forth. And they also had quite a lot of altcoins, which wasn't as common in China. So, it seemed like a pretty natural partnership. People didn't like it, though, when this happened about 1 year ago. People thought that it was kind of just a play so that Huobi could leave China and try to have a headquarters somewhere else, or so that Poloniex was just kind of like merging and acquiring with a number of different groups. So I don't know. People were really funny about it a year ago, and then we didn't really hear about it again.
Yeah. I mean, I struggle in general with Asian centralized exchanges. So my opinion on this one probably isn't super helpful. I mean, the hack is nonsense. I think we're going to talk about that in a second and kind of what's going on. That to me is also...
We're going to get there.
I know. It's also problematic. Maybe I'll leave most of my additional thoughts until then because, I think it's...
All right. Let me run through the context.
All right.
So it was weird that Poloniex actually acquired Huobi because Poloniex's volume was basically a tenth of Huobi's, as far as we know publicly, about 1 year ago. And also Poloniex had just reached a $10 million settlement with the SEC for selling unregistered securities a full year ago. So it seemed kind of out of place that this was happening. But to give that a little bit more context, I guess, in 2018, Huobi and another large Chinese group, Bitmain, had actually cut their staff down substantially. So they cut their staff in 2018. In 2019, Huobi sees other entrants in the Chinese market. And then in 2020 through 2022, they start trying to get acquired, basically. And so they didn't really care who acquired them, so long as someone acquired them. And if your primary investors are, or if your primary board members are just investors, they're probably pro M&A. So we have all of these wild things kind of going on in the background over the last few years. And then what gets really interesting and where I wanted to bring in some critical thought is over the last few days where Poloniex has been doing really well, Huobi's been doing well, but under the umbrella of Poloniex, there's a lot of rumors going around that Poloniex is shutting its Chinese offices. Sorry.
Bless you. That was random. Usually there's some build up to a sneeze. Yeah, I mean, slashing staff, like we talked about this with respect to Ava Labs the other day. I mean, it's pretty normal, I think.
Well, it is normal, except that people think it might be Poloniex signaling that they're going to move out of China. And then this is where it becomes interesting because Huobi still exists in China. So Poloniex could, in theory, if they still have really low volumes there, pull out and still maintain share in the Chinese market. But the concern is that if they close their whole Poloniex office, that the Huobi office will also close and then the Chinese will lose this service. But what's really important to note here is that this is 100% conjecture.
Yeah.
There are no news sources about it, but on crypto Twitter and crypto LinkedIn, there's a bunch of people being like, pull your assets from Poloniex. They're closing their Chinese branch.
I think, wasn't that something that was kind of rebutted a little bit with their partnership announcement? Like there was a lot of speculation that Poloniex was actually going to maybe be acquired by Huobi, is what I understood. And then obviously they came out and announced a partnership instead. So I think but they're trying to dispel some of those myths. I mean, that's the only information that is not conjecture. So we'll have to see. I mean, Huobi has had their own fair share of challenges in the last few years. I think they've kind of resurged now with a renewed approach and some momentum. But we'll have to see. I mean, Huobi was top 2-3 exchanges in the world for the longest time and then just completely fell off the face of the earth because of uncertainty around China and some founder issues. And a couple people had maybe been arrested or maybe been disappeared. And like, there's just some weird shit going on over there. And so I expect this to be no different. I'm sure at the end we'll be like, oh, that's random. But yeah, it's all just.
But the other thing that ends up being pertinent and that is feeding this rumor machine is that Poloniex has, in theory, unmasked the hacker. So as we talked about last week, there was a giant hack. It started, if you look through the news, started with 60 million and they somehow didn't shut it down. And some sources say it was up to 120 million in theft, which seems like maybe they should have noticed.
It was their hot wallet, right? I think it was their exchange hot wallet that was compromised somehow.
Exactly. So Justin Sun actually ended up sending out messages offering a white hat bounty. And now they believe that they have found the person and that person is residing in China or Russia, which seems like a weird political.
Of course,
but also maybe if Poloniex is shutting down all of those Chinese offices, it's because they've noticed some sort of security breach via China, or they think that those hacks are happening through that office or something to that end. So maybe it's not all conjecture, but at this point it is only hypothesis.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know specifically. I didn't understand that they for sure knew the identity, but I think they've cornered.
I don't think they do.
I think they've cornered the assets. Like they've traced all the assets to venues where they can actually freeze them for the most part. So most of the assets are just stuck there unless they return them. And so I suspect, and we've been talking about this for months. This is actually where blockchain really does shine. When shit like this happens, following the breadcrumbs is a lot quicker. Look at how fast the FTX trial was concluded because so much of the information is already available. So it's very similar, I think, when it comes to hacks. They have said that they've got the US, China, Russia, I believe, police authority or enforcement authorities all working on this. Again, could be a bluff. Who knows?
They did also say that they've marked the stolen funds and will freeze the assets.
That's what I mean. Like
they aren't returned. But
yeah, so the hacker, regardless of whether they know his or her identity, the assets aren't going to go anywhere. So the only option is to return the 120 million and take the 10 million. Even then, 10 million is a pretty good payday for a group of hackers in North Korea or wherever the hell they are. I don't know. That seems to be like the easiest scapegoat always too, right? Like they just say, oh yeah, North Korea, China, Russia. Like
exactly. They're like, yeah, someone in one of those places, they wronged us. Like, okay, what a good narrative.
And the general public is like, yeah, screw those guys. Like you don't even think about it. It's like, but what? Like what actually leads them to believe that these people reside in these countries? Maybe they do. I don't know. But I don't like the assumptions that are being made personally, but we'll see. Okay. This is the Thanksgiving present.
All right.
That we're about
to you go for it. You're really excited about this.
Bum, bum, bum. Well, CZ admits guilt, which is nice to see. He had to eat a little bit of humble pie. I don't think he admitted guilt in the way that this headline / article implies. He more or less took responsibility for the fact that there were some mistakes made over the course of building a business from zero to tens of billions in revenue and value. Okay. Like that is like the least amount of responsibility taking possible in this scenario, which is of course probably what they were trying to do. They also somehow settled on a $4.3 billion settlement, which
so much.
Again, F you Gensler for making this part of your budget. I think like I don't like that at all, but I do like that for some of these actions that somebody's being held accountable, because there's a lot of nonsense that's happened with respect to Binance. Again, there's a bunch of lawyering that has happened here, and so they're admitting some things and taking responsibility for some other stuff, and there's a lot of nonsense happening. But I think they're also getting away. Their CZ is being released of obligation for some things, and I think because they figure they're never going to extradite him anyways. So
well, it does say that he is facing potentially 18 months in prison. It also says that his net worth is 23 billion and he has to pay a $50 million fine. So.
Yeah, like okay. Like obviously he's doing okay, but my point here is that he's also had to step down as CEO, and yes. So I mean he was able to spin it the exact same way that I think most people would spin it. And I've said this myself, if any of the businesses we ever operate get to a certain size and scale, I am not suited to.
And he's been there a long time. I mean, he founded Binance, I think in 2017. So
before that, I think, yeah, it was quite a while ago.
So, I mean, he's been the CEO for a very long time, and he's been giving the middle finger and publicly having a lot of discourse that typically boards don't like. So I think it was just a matter of time before he wasn't technically the CEO anymore. But it is interesting to think about CZ and how he's been quite worldly, moving around, right? He's born in China, moved to Canada as a kid, and then studied in Canada, ended up working the Tokyo Stock Exchange, worked in the New York Stock Exchange, and then moved into that crypto space. And since then, I believe he's in the UAE now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in, as far as I know, he's in Dubai, which is non-extradition, which is what leads me to believe that that's probably why this was done. The US figured that he wasn't, even if they did charge him, he wasn't coming. So this way they could claim a win. He could claim a win and still be able to travel internationally. I mean, I'm hopeful. The reason I believe this to be a present is because I think that for gross negligence, which is what I consider many of these actions, conscious, willing negligence, I think there should be some version of accountability. Do I think this went far enough for the actual individuals that are responsible for it? No. But Binance, if Binance was killed because of this lawsuit, because of these allegations, that would have been existential for crypto, I think. Whether we love or hate Binance, it's still the largest by volume and by users globally. And there's a lot of people that Binance is their only means of major access to the markets. And so that could be a huge problem. So what I like about this is that new CEO, I was not confident at all that Renegade CZ would actually come in line and do what was necessary, because his entire reputation and persona has been the opposite. And so Absolutely. I thought it was like he was fighting himself on how to respond to some of this stuff. And a lot of the Binance decisions were very puzzling. To me, this one's not puzzling. Strategically, this makes the most sense. Get rid of CZ, get rid of the main vector of criticism, try to put as much of this legal issue behind us, get approval to consider operating in the US again if they want to come into compliance, which until yesterday, I didn't think they would do. Now I do. I think they're going to have no choice but to do so. And so all of this, I think, is great for the space. It's great for Binance users, great for the space in general. Screw you, Gary Gensler, for it being 4.3 billion. I don't like that the SEC can claim this kind of win.
And 50 million in fines. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it was necessary. So
before we go, I want to talk about the positive of Richard Tang, who is the new CEO.
Yeah. So he was head of global markets, I think.
Yes, he was head of global markets, I believe. But he has quite a background. So he appears to be from Singapore and has an undergrad and a postgrad in applied finance from Singapore Management University. But his career started in the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is interesting, including things like Director of Corporate Finance.
Just talking about the other day, because that's who has become the head of the central bank in Singapore.
Exactly. And then
the regulatory agency, or is it the central bank? Central bank. Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
And then he also worked for Singapore Exchange, mostly on policy frameworks, rule formulation, that kind of thing. And then he ended up working in Abu Dhabi for a period of time with their financial services regulatory authority. And then finally at the Dubai Financial Services Authority before eventually joining the crypto sphere. And the reason that I think this is so interesting is we often talk about Binance and how they don't appear to be coming into compliance anywhere. But if Richard Tang is the new CEO, I observe that it's going to be exactly the opposite. He's well-versed in compliance. He's well-versed in regulation. He probably knows how to thread the needle there. And we might see Binance re-entering some of the markets that they left. But if anything, we will see them complying in the markets that they're still in. Yeah.
I'm excited about this just because everything he's ever done has involved compliance and regulation. And
exactly.
For most of us paying attention, that is arguably the problem with Binance, is that they've just thumbed their nose at compliance and regulation, generally speaking, or just backed out of any environment that has expected it. And what I would think will happen now is, well, I don't know, but we'll hope that they start to engage this regulatory piece a lot more because of his background. It's what's necessary globally. Like, I mean, Coinbase is obviously very publicly said, we want to be the regulated, compliant, environment, especially for US persons and much of Europe. But there's the rest of the world that doesn't really have a meaningful participant. Kraken, but they've got a lot of their own issues that they're having to deal with right now, as well as launching a layer 2. So yeah, it's all in all, I think this is great news. I'm excited to see new blood, new ideas, new momentum at the helm of Binance. And it seems to me, with no disrespect meant for CZ, because yes, he's done some stuff that I'm probably not super happy about, but he's also been one of the most consequential figures in the space. So it's good for him to be able to step down and take his founder hat and go focus on kind of some of
and
that.
go FUD himself. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe he'll come on the pod. Who knows? But it's also good for Binance to, level up to another caliber of CEO, in my opinion. That's a little bit more corporate, a little bit more structured and compliance focused. I'm a big fan.
Awesome.
Till next week.
Well,
see.
That's it. We got Binance. Yeah, exactly. We got Binance, which everybody's really excited about. And we have things like Huobi and Poloniex, which you need to wear your tin hat about a little bit. Eat some salt, wear a tin hat, and think about the news.
All right. So for any of our loyal viewers, listeners, followers, there will be no show tomorrow in observance of American Thanksgiving. If you're not in America, still a good day to be thankful. Every day is a good day to be thankful, I think. But tomorrow's a holiday here, so we will not have a show. Friday, the jury's still out. If we're going to have a show Friday, we're not 100% certain. With certainty, we'll be back on Monday.
Yeah.
And away we go. With that, today I say to you, Kiara, go FUD yourself.
FUD yourself.